Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our viewers and participants in A Piece of Cake. Abdurraheem Green and myself, Abdul Baker, bringing this show to you, and we have two special guests on this occasion, Dr. Sharjeel and Dr. Wajid. And before I ask them to explain their medical professions, so that we can provide a context in which they're going to speak and the areas that they're going to speak to. And before I introduce our esteemed brother, again, all of them esteemed, but Abdurraheem Green, mashallah, tabarakallah, a few pointers I want to make now. You'll notice I've dropped the doctor from my name, deliberately so, because I don't want any new viewers confusing three of us as the three doctors as holding similar titles. My title is from a PhD, and the others are medical doctors in that instance. And Abdurraheem hasn't got his sheikh before him. He never uses that anyway, but we know that we refer to him in that regard anyhow. The point I want to make to our viewers today, this is a very, very sensitive and polarizing topic. And we've seen in the polarizations and the discussions taking place insults, vitriol, and a whole host of other things taking place amongst the Muslim communities. This is not going to be a platform for that, and including some of the messages coming with vitriol initially that have been there. Our brother Hassan's going to be filled in those comments anyway. So we want this to be constructive. We are going to be throwing up some issues. We are going to be throwing out challenging questions. We are going to be looking at both areas of polarization and discussing what we are capable and qualified to discuss. So I want to put that out in the beginning before we get into this discussion. And I'll ask Brother Abdurraheem if there's anything he wants to add to that, and then I will introduce or let our two colleagues introduce themselves and the medical profession and remit that they have. Brother Abdurraheem.
Yeah, bro, not really. I could say a lot, but let's just get on with introducing the brothers. There's a lot I could say, to be honest. But I think that everything we need to remember always, bro, innamal mu'minuna ikhwa. The believers are brothers, right? And we have to start from the point of view of believing everyone is sincere. So this polarization is on, like really what's happening here from my assessment, okay? From my assessment is there is a polarization based upon two groups of people, both of them very sincerely believing they are doing the right thing, right? And honestly, my assessment is that, and it's coming from both sides, because there are a lot of people from the, towing the what you could call the standard line, we all need to get vaccinated, COVID is destroying the earth, whatever, people are suffering, this and that, and we have to do something about it. And anyone who objects to it is called anti-vax, a quack, an idiot, conspiracy theorist, he's a nut job. Yeah. So it's coming from both sides here, right? And from the other side, obviously, there's the whole thing that you're sellout, you're part of the government worldwide, conspiracy to destroy Muslims. How can you trust anybody who's on the side of the government? And we could go into a whole long list of very, very genuine reasons they have as to why they shouldn't trust any government anymore. And we would all be foolish to disregard those things, the trust. And this is what we had our podcast about last week, bro.
That's
or
right.
the week before, was about trust, because the whole point is that the bottom line is, at the end of the day, we can have this podcast. I personally don't think it's going to change much, because the people who don't trust governments don't trust them, and it doesn't matter what we say, it is not going to make much difference, right? What I do hope to do, is to get a bit of clarity, from the point of view of our brothers here who are doctors, who are practicing, right? And, to get their viewpoint and maybe dispel some myths around it. I'll be honest, I don't hold any position. I'm actually really very much stuck in the middle of this. I'm not here nor there. So yeah, that's it really. So
Jazakallah khair,
having said
Abdurraheem. I think that
said a whole lot of stuff anyway.
no, Jazakallah khair, Abdurraheem. That's very nuanced, nothing important. And salam alaikum to our brothers and sisters. Wa alaikum salam to those who've greeted us. Now, doctors, I will ask you to introduce yourselves and the perspectives you're going to come from. So, Dr. Sharjeel, can I ask you first and foremost, salam alaikum Abdullah, to introduce yourself, please?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you both for having me on the show. I'm a doctor who is training in acute medicine. And by training, that means I'm working my way to become a consultant in acute medicine. So I graduated in 2012 and have been working as a doctor since then. And since 2016, I moved to Birmingham and I have been working in acute medicine, which can be thought of as emergency medicine for the past 3 or 4 years. Since the pandemic began, I've been working at City Hospital Birmingham, Sandwell Hospital Birmingham, which has borne, which has seen a lot of the impact of the pandemic.
Jazakallah khair for that, Dr. Sharjeel. Dr. Wajid, Assalamu alaikum Abdullah. Welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam. Jazakallah khairan for having us here. Very much appreciate the opportunity. A brief introduction. I don't usually like going into it, but I think it might be useful in this context. I am a medical doctor. I'm a GP, but I'm also chairing the Medical Muslim National COVID Response Group. So this is a medical group that brought together specialists from across the country, all Muslim specialists from across the country in a range of different areas, so that we can all come to a medical consensus as Muslim healthcare professionals to best advise our community. And this has been in place since the start of the pandemic. Apart from that, I'm also the vice president of the British Islamic Medical Association, and also a director of Lifesavers, which teaches CPR in masjids for the Federation of Islamic Medical Associations worldwide. And I have been studying, I've been teaching medical students in social media and the history of medicine as well for the last 8 years, part of which includes on vaccination and on anti-vaccination thoughts and ideas. And finally, in addition to that, I have a degree in clinical genetics.
Jazakallah khair for that. I appreciate that. What I want to do then, Dr. Wajid, I'm going to come back to you because you've mentioned, and unless Abdurraheem wants to come and jump in at any time, he can, inshallah. You've mentioned the associations that you're involved in. Let's talk about COVID first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of theories, conspiracy theories came in about COVID, government designs on COVID. And as Abdurraheem said, dismissing any such conspiracy where there is or there are precedents of suspicion before. And I will say as a black Muslim, I'm going to say as a black individual, we had historical things that happened in Tuskegee in America, where vaccinations were given and giving the African Americans syphilis. Okay, we see about Pfizer going to Nigeria not so long ago, under the guise of giving vaccinations to cure particular ailments. But the indigenous population didn't know. The government of Nigeria knew, but the indigenous population didn't know. And there were deaths on that. There is suspicion. I did an article in April on, not conspiracy as it were, but I looked at Donald Rumsfeld and what he was doing in between working for the US government at that time and working for a big company that was producing particular vaccinations that they wanted to push out onto the market and land lucrative contracts. So my question for you in that instance, are these all of these conspiracy theorists completely off the chart, or are there legitimate reasons for concerns around some of these suspicions and concerns? Is there legitimacy or validity to the fear that is around some of these vaccinations, and that not the vaccinations only, the intentions behind them, the designs, the import behind them?
Jazakallah khairan. Very good question. I think, to make it very clear that this is not a case where, this is complete, utter, no basis whatsoever for what people are saying or what their concerns are. Are there concerns as well that healthcare communities have? Of course. We're not, we have to take the vaccinations ourselves. We have to give it to our parents, if or COVID is affecting us as well. So concerns are, some of them have a valid basis. Some of them may be misunderstandings. Some of them may be, it is a spectrum. Some of the concerns, you can see where they come from, and some of them you really struggle to see where they're coming from. It's less about for myself, and when analyzing it, is the worry isn't when people bring up concerns, because it's not a case of, listen, I'm the doctor, you do as I say. That's, that age is gone 20, 30, 50 years ago. We're supposed to be able to educate and explain, not dictate. But the concern is that when you do educate or when you do explain, that it's not taken, and the issue is an issue of trust. It's saying, when people say, I'm worried, we say, right, let's talk about it. When people say, I don't trust the healthcare profession, full stop. I don't trust the ulama, full stop. I don't trust anyone in authority, full stop. That isn't a legitimate, that isn't an issue. That isn't a, let's have a healthy debate or a discussion. That's saying that when no one is trustworthy, then it is very much, as was being mentioned earlier at the beginning, that this is becoming the Trumpification of the debate, where, as you have in America, that no one is worthy of trust. Everyone is on the payroll. Everyone is against you, and therefore, what happens is that there's a breakdown in respect for any authority. There's a breakdown in respect for anyone's opinion, and that's when the field is clear, and it leaves it leads to a breakdown of society and the societal norms. So that's what really worries us, is that when people say, I can't trust, and you see some of the comments there, I can't trust any NHS doctor. That's really worrying, because that's a blanket statement. That isn't a concern about the COVID or the COVID vaccine. That is, that is a general attitude or a view that's being promoted. I can't trust any scholar that's pro-vaccine. That's an attitude that's being promoted. That is a lot more dangerous than any one individual concern or myth about a specific aspect can be.
Jazakallah khair for that. Abdurraheem, do you want to ask
Yeah, I want
anything
to take you up on this, bro. So the thing is here, bro, is that unfortunately you're mixing a lot of stuff together, right? And you yourself are using sort of tropes that don't help. So when you say things like the Trumpification, yeah, it's not Donald Trump that has broken down trust in society, right? Donald Trump had nothing to do, for example, with the fiction of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, when it was invaded and millions of people lost their lives. What did Donald Trump have to do with that, right? That was a right-wing Republican government backed by corporations who are just there to make money, to take oil, to kill people for the sake of the economic benefit, right? That's just one example amongst so many. Muslims are constantly being battered by the media, by the prevent industry, the securitization industry. It's going on at every single level of society, right? If you don't have to be a Muslim, you could be an environmentalist, right? We have old grannies who have been referred to prevent because they're, speaking up for the environment. So what it seems to be is that anybody who is standing up against corporate interests is singled out as an enemy, labeled with the label of conspiracy theory. You've got little Trump over there, you're a Trumpite, right? And that is really, I'm sorry, bro, making, you know, it's really, it's just adding fuel to the fire. Really, that's what I feel when you say stuff like that. I don't think, looking from the point of view of those people who feel that, it's not going to help, and it's not even true, because people are saying, what's Trump got to do with this, right? If trust is breaking down in society, bro, that's because it has increasingly been run by corporations, and the biggest and one of the most biggest, the most influential of these corporations are the pharmaceutical companies, who have committed, they have killed people, they have lied. Pfizer has lied. They have lawsuit after lawsuit. They have been fined millions of dollars, right? People have died. Now, here's the question that a lot of people are going to be asking is, would you let a criminal like that look after your kids? Would you let a criminal like that look after your granny? Would you let a criminal like that look after your old elderly parents? If there was a pharmacist down the road and you found out they were selling dodgy medicine, lying to people, selling medicine that killed people and made them unhealthy, claiming it was something else, would you send people to that pharmacy to go and get stuff from them? Yeah, I don't think you would. So how are we taking a vaccine from an organization like Pfizer, who has a track record of they're criminals? The problem is here, where you can't blame people for not trusting. So the onus is on you guys who basically represent the pharmaceutical industry, because they're the guys, the pharmacists, that these guys, I know them. I know people who sell drugs. They come to the doctors. They, you know, they take you out for dinner. I don't mean you personally, bro, right? I don't mean you personally. They take you out for dinner and they get you to push their drugs. Another question, guys, that you have to answer is, what does it mean to be a doctor today anyway? Aren't you just drug pushers for the pharmaceutical industry? So there's the whole question around, you know, the whole system of medicine that you're involved in. This is why people have these suspicions, bro, because the suspicion goes right down to the very root of, what do you call medicine anyway? Right? I mean, I wonder when's the last time you guys prescribed black seed oil and black seed and honey, you know, as a cure. And, you know, like, obviously people are on a different realm here. You know, that's what I'm trying to say, guys, is that people are on a different platform. The distrust is very, very deep and very, very profound. Yeah. And that's not to say that modern medicine hasn't done amazing things. I'm not saying I believe all of these things. I am not saying it at all. Actually, I've always put I'm pretty much a guy who puts my trust in experts. I respect medicine, I respect doctors, but I have my doubts and I have my real concerns. And I think that when people voice them, they need to be taken seriously. And a lot of these things don't have answers for, bro. I haven't heard them anyway.
Well, I think let you, Dr. Wajid, come back to that. I think because there's a lot that was said.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, when I say Trumpification, I don't mean specifically related to Donald Trump, but it's the breakdown. It's not the breakdown in trust, and it's not that there aren't very good reasons to have a healthy mistrust of certain individuals, corporate interests, governments. There is such a thing as healthy mistrust, and then there is unhealthy mistrust. I'll give you an example. Let's use Islamic scholars. Are there Islamic scholars who have been caught doing un-Islamic acts? Yes, there are. Are there Islamic scholars who support tyrannical regimes? Yes, there are. Is it therefore acceptable to say that all Islamic scholars therefore are untrustworthy unless proven otherwise? No, that is an extreme position. Very similarly, when it comes to your healthcare professionals, are there healthcare professionals who maybe not very good at their job? Yes, but is the entire healthcare industry untrustworthy and essentially legalized drug dealers? No, that's an unreasonable state to be in, and unfortunately, it does seem to be some. I'm definitely do not want to say that everyone who has concerns thinks like that, but there are the few who do push that agenda. For the majority who are concerned, like anyone else, saying, why, what about X, what about Y? That's where the discussion is. But there is the minority. I was just talking about my fear about the very vocal, very extreme minority who say you cannot trust anyone in the healthcare industry. They're all tainted. That is as extreme as saying you cannot trust any brother because some brothers rape. You cannot trust any scholars because some scholars can be can do things that are un-Islamic or hypocritical, or you cannot trust anyone in authority because governments act out and do things that are illegitimate. And it's the same with drug companies. I'm not here to defend a drug company. I do not have any links. I do not, and people are saying that, like my job is dependent on saying whatever about a drug company. It isn't. If you know how the NHS is structured, GPs are independent contractors. However, drug companies make paracetamol. Drug companies make life-saving drugs. And the same debate doesn't happen about those drugs. So all that we're saying is that I'm not here to defend Pfizer and their actions. They have huge issues, as has been mentioned, or the record of experimentation that has happened in the past, Tuskegee Airmen, or that happened with Pfizer in Nigeria, and there are many others. Those are legitimate issues, legitimate concerns, but also don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are also benefits as well, and it doesn't hurt them as much as it hurts us to reject the things that might benefit us, and that's what we're here to talk about today. We're Muslim healthcare professionals. We're not outside the community. We're part of the community. We're your brothers and sisters. We're literally from your communities. We pray in your mosques, and there is absolutely no advantage to us, financially, physically, ethically, in any way, shape, or form, to harm our own people.
Dr. Wajid, Jazakallah khair for that. And before we move on to our other colleague and move this down a little bit, there's one or two things I want to highlight. What you've just said there is very key, in the sense that we have got unqualified people in these fields speaking, okay? And I've witnessed that, and others have witnessed that, where we've got individuals who've got no qualifications whatsoever in any fields of medical science, advising cancer patients, okay? In this particular instance, advising cancer patients who are following them because they're coming under the barb of alternative medicine, and they've really demonized conventional doctors. This is a reality that's out there that does need to be highlighted. But jumping back onto the track that we're on now, before we move on to our brother who's been patiently waiting, I want to give a context to what Abdurraheem was highlighting regarding the concerns, what you've spoken to, that there is a legitimacy to a degree in this area. And as I mentioned, Rumsfeld was involved in, I'm reading from my article, in the patent of Tamiflu. Quote, a treatment for many kinds of influenza and the preferred drug for the avian flu. And then it's quotes here: if there was ever an outbreak of the highly contagious virus or threat of one, governments would be forced to buy billions of dollars worth of the treatment from Gilead Sciences. The patenting of drugs and vaccines to treat public health emergencies remains a controversial subject. Gilead, for its part, sees epidemics as a growth market, and it has an aggressive marketing campaign to encourage businesses and individuals to stockpile Tamiflu just in case. And I'll put the last quote here. These companies are banking on apocalyptic future of rampant disease, one of which governments are forced to buy at top dollar whatever life-saving products the private sector has under patent. I'll end the quote there. So this is putting a context on what we are actually looking at and how long this has been taking place. And you've mentioned, yes, with Pfizer and others, and the abuse and this marketing and capitalizing upon fear of the masses in this instance. But I want to move it now. We're going to come back to this, but I want to move it down to some of the personal experiences, because we've had even these individuals, these entities saying, no, the coronavirus isn't true, it's fake, it's not happening. And this is where I want to speak to our doctors now concerning the personal experiences you've had of individuals coming into you. Was it flu? Was it asthma? Was it coronavirus? What are your experiences firsthand, please?
I just want to make one point about the medications. As you all know, we're into the second spike now. And although the numbers of the people infected are peak, alhamdulillah, one of the kind of small victories that we have seen is that the mortality has been less. Because just that 8 or 9 months of research has actually saved lives already. So before we even talk about the vaccine here, the research that has been done in hospitals has saved lives undoubtedly. And as you may have heard during the first wave, you probably heard of, dozens of doctors dying each week, or nurses, healthcare professionals. Alhamdulillah, now we are not seeing this. And this is actually as a consequence, first and foremost, the praises to Allah, but then we have to thank those who are researching this, whether it's to do with improving PPE, whether this is to do with improving infection control, test and trace, or whether this is to do with actually the new medications out there now that we give to coronavirus patients, such as dexamethasone. We're seeing benefits from this. And dexamethasone is a drug that's been around for years and years and years. And I know for a fact, if someone hadn't heard of dexamethasone, they'd be suspicious of this. What's this dexamethasone you're going to give me? But actually, this dexamethasone, it is saving lives by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you asked me about, and to do with patents, unfortunately, we have to accept where we are right now. We're in the, this is modern medicine. It's maybe unfortunate for some people that this is modern medicine, and we're not practicing Islamic medicine. I have to hold my hands up and say we're not practicing, prophetic medicine. But does that mean that patents don't have a role here? Because unfortunately, these companies need an incentive to develop drugs. And what is the main incentive for many people? And that's money. So when you're going to get, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, that saves lives, unfortunately, there has to be a financial incentive for these things to come about. But I do agree that, we do have, a very soiled history, a devastating history. And I was just reading last night, even to do with X-rays, when X-rays first came about, they call them the X-ray martyrs. Many people who developed X-rays, they died as a consequence. Many people handled the X-rays, they died as a consequence. They had metastatic cancers. And, but now we have X-rays, which, are ultimately saving lives. You need an X-ray to pick out COVID lungs. So I think there should not be complete mistrust of, medical advances. And alhamdulillah, now we're much better at this. You talked about, what is the personal kind of experience. Right now I'm not at work because unfortunately my daughter tested positive on Monday and my wife tested positive on Tuesday. Alhamdulillah, my daughter, as I say, kids, don't really kind of bear the brunt of the virus, but my wife, she's had fever, almost every day. And where I work in Birmingham, there's a lot of Muslim doctors, and these brothers have suffered. I've had one brother who's in his 40s, had a pneumonia and he had fever every day for 2 weeks. One of my older colleagues had to take a month off work. He needed oxygen hospital. One of my other colleagues who I work with right now, he's still been off work for weeks and weeks and weeks. He's been off. He's not able to return to work. So a lot of your Muslim brothers are really paying a heavy price. And alhamdulillah, I have youth on my age, but really, if I was in my 40s or 50s or 60s, I would be pretty scared right now.
Sharjeel, let me ask you a question, bro. So a lot of the things that are floating around this is basically a form of flu. COVID is part of the same family as flu. It's just a severe flu. Anyone could get flu and get knocked out, and anyone who's had the flu badly, and I've had it plenty of times in my life, and I've been literally knocked out for a week or 2 weeks. I think I must be a walking immune system today. Alhamdulillah, in the last few years I haven't had it much, but yeah. So I mean, that people would say, okay, what's different? What's the difference between this and the flu? Maybe it's a sort of, yeah, it's bad. People are suffering. People are dying. But is it really as bad as what they're saying? And is it true that there are some really serious long-term effects, that there is organ damage that takes place and stuff like that? What I really want to know, bro, is what I have not really heard myself until today, which I'm really hoping to hear from you, is, like a genuine personal account from a Muslim brother who I can trust, that this is real, that from your study and from your thing, that this is real. This is not normal. This is something different. This is something serious, that the hospitals are really suffering, that the NHS is really struggling, because we've had stories of actually the hospitals are empty. Nurses are sitting around chatting, relaxing, chilling. There's been reports. We've even had, I don't know if you saw the video that was going viral of these guys standing outside hospitals and, test centers, and there was no one there, empty, nothing. Right? What is your experience? Is it really, I mean, we've seen, I've seen footage of New York and stuff, like it's a war zone. What is it like really? What is it really like? Are people just working day in, day out? Tell us the reality of this, of ground zero, as they call it. That's what I want to know. I want a personal account. Is it real though? Is it really real? And how are people suffering?
It's interesting because before the pandemic hit in March, we were all hearing in January that this is going to be like the flu. Most people are going to have mild symptoms, and the unlucky ones, it's going to be like flu. Flu can be a killer. It's quite correct. And just like the majority of people in flu have a complete recovery, in coronavirus, majority of people have a complete recovery. However, the difference is in the severe illness of flu and the severe illness of coronavirus. The severe illness in coronavirus is affecting a larger proportion of individuals, whether those individuals are individuals who are elderly, or individuals who have cancer, or they're individuals who have diabetes and hypertension, or they're individuals from the BAME background. Coronavirus is hitting those at-risk populations harder. I remember that even before coronavirus, perhaps during a winter, I would hear of, like, there would be a case in the hospital of a young person dying of flu. Maybe they were, 40s or 45, 50. The one individual over winter in a hospital. But I can tell you that in March, the way it works is a patient comes into the accident emergency, and the accident emergency will send home whoever they can. And if for whatever reason they cannot send that patient home, they will get on the phone to the medical team, which is us, and say, we need to admit this person. And I can tell you that every hour we would get a phone call saying, we got another one, we got another one, we got another one. And eventually our whole unit, the whole acute medical unit, was full of COVID or suspected COVID. And suspected COVID is what you call COVID, which has not been confirmed on a test. But you have got other signs like the chest X-ray, pneumonia, and the fever, and the low blood count. So that's what suspected COVID is, and it was full. And the reason you may have seen some people not doing things is because the hospital works in departments. Yeah. So, for example, when previously there would be people going out playing sports and having fractures, that department would be busy. But obviously, if no one's going out, people aren't crashing their cars, certain departments, of course, will be quiet. And that was the tragedy of the first wave, actually, that people were having strokes at home, people were having heart attacks at home, and they were too scared to go into hospital.
Yeah.
And why the second wave is happening,
I was like I do a lot of mountain biking, and I was being super careful because I thought, I do not want to go to a hospital. I don't want to go near it.
Exactly. And what's smashing the NHS right now is people can't put things off for that long now.
No, they can't.
So the people who have got other problems are now attending hospital, Whereas before, a lot of the people with angina, perhaps they were putting it off. Okay, I don't want to go to hospital now. I'll wait a month. I'll wait 2 months. But people have been waiting for so long, and now we're having the COVID and the usual stuff.
Dr. Sharjeel, can I ask this question? Yeah, I'll come to you shortly. Just on that point, we were seeing videos circulating months before from nurses in tears in America and some in the UK saying they're warning people about coming to hospital because they were coming with normal symptoms and they were being neglected and they were just being basically conflated with COVID because it was easier as a statistic to, instead of saying what the underlying or other symptom was, it just became a cover, a blanket cover to mask other ailments. And you had nurses, well, they looked like nurses, sitting in hospitals privately, distressed and everything. Is that something that is a reality? Who are those individuals who were doing that? Not that you should know them personally, but they looked genuine. It came from different parts of the world, the Western world in particular. So can you speak about that? Is that happening?
So anyone who works in a British hospital as a doctor will be very familiar with the capacity team, okay? And the capacity team walk around the hospital saying, we're getting full now, can you discharge people? We need to try and get discharges today, discharges. So British hospitals are never keen on actually admitting people. They're a lot more focused on discharging people. And for right reasons, because, you know, if I have a 78-year-old lady come to me with medical conditions, if I don't think she needs to be in hospital, I really don't want her to be in hospital, because even before COVID, she may pick up a pneumonia, she may pick up a nasty bowel infection. So I don't think there is anywhere near a culture of doctors admitting anyone unnecessarily in British hospitals. And that's what I think the British medical profession does very well. You know, we don't tend to admit people unnecessarily.
Dr. Wajid.
Jazakallah khair. I want to just add to what Brother Sharjeel is saying and make an emotional case, because this is an emotional situation, for what the reality is of COVID, how it is destroying individual lives, families, and communities. I live in East London. Right now, East London, the hospitals in East London are at breaking point. I know this because three of my brothers, and my father are on call at this moment, are in the hospitals, and they're sending me messages like, this hospital has run out of oxygen. This hospital they've used all their intensive care beds, they've used all the surgical theaters, they've used all the normal theaters, and they've run out of intensive care units. Now they're opening a side ward and using it as intensive care. They're sending distressing messages. This person has been told to come from leave. This is happening. This is a situation right now that since we started this podcast, 25 people have died of COVID. In this country only, since we started this podcast, at the rate of 2 to 3 airplanes full of people are falling out of the sky, are dying of COVID every single night in this country. So this isn't something that's being made up. It's not something that's being exaggerated. We have no interest in exaggerating it. Just a few days ago, a healthy, no comorbidities consultant who worked in a local hospital, Muslim, passed away from COVID. People are being orphaned from this disease. People are being widowed. And this is not to say let's get hysterical, but it is to say that
it's real and it's serious. And you guys are here telling us you've seen it, you've lived it, you are GPs, you're on the front line, and this is what you've seen.
Well, I'm a GP.
To hear, right? Because guys, you have to remember the trust level is so low that people don't believe what they see on the TV. I don't even believe anything. My dad. Yeah, go on, Sharjeel. Yes.
Let me tell you a tale of, sometimes when mistrust goes wrong.
Yeah.
I had a man, in his 40s during the first wave, who is on 100% level of oxygen. And it was clear that this man was not coping on his own. He was not coping. He needed to be intubated. What does intubation mean? Intubation, for those who don't know, is when they're put into an induced coma, and a pipe is put into the lungs, and a machine breathes for them.
Yeah,
You know, the
yeah.
ventilator.
Yeah, yeah, the ventilator.
And this brother was, you know, obviously in his mind, he's hearing that, you know, anyone goes on a ventilator dies. And he's just refusing the ventilator. He's refusing the ventilator. He's refusing the ventilator. And he was probably, you know, he refused it initially, and you know, he died later on. You know, a man in his 40s with teenage children. And you know, do these conspiracy theories have an effect? Of course they do, because it's a lack of a misunderstanding. Because someone who needs a ventilator, you know, are at the doors of death.
Yeah.
So when you say to people, "I've heard that anyone who goes on a ventilator dies," it's really kind of, you know.
Well, even if they, you know, like I get what you're saying. I think the thing was that there was more to it than that. There was also a lot of reports of people suffering long-term damage from the ventilators.
Of course.
That they also weren't being used properly. There was a lot of best practice that was being developed in Italy that got passed on, and everything was improved. I mean, to be honest, when I heard stuff, I mean, I honestly, believe me, I don't take anything, you know, I do not swallow anything easily from anywhere, right? I try to, but I'm sort of, I haven't seen a doctor for God knows how long anyway. I'm one of those people.
Well, just this week.
I mean, I get what you're saying, bro. I do get what you're saying. I don't think it was I appreciate what you're saying. I don't think it was so much the conspiracy thing, and the guy should know that. Well, it's better to be on a ventilator than die, right? Like you've got more of a chance. Like you're at the stage where you're going to.
You say that the guy should know, but honestly, when you instill fear in the hearts of people, logical and rational thinking goes out the window. Especially when you're on high levels of oxygen.
Dr. Sharjeel, that's a very good point. And let's speak to the vaccine. Someone asking.
Yeah, I think it moves very nicely to the vaccine, doesn't it?
Yeah, so the vaccine, for example, we're hearing about mutational disturbance of the DNA. And this is a close friend of mine who works in King's. Okay, he has questions about that. Okay, a microbiologist. He's not in virology, I understand that, but he's been in that for 30 odd years. So I told him about the show today because he's going to watch it later. He says, I have my suspicions. Okay. He's worked in the hospital in this field for decades. He says, I'm still out on this particular one. You've got, we're hearing reports about infertility because of suspicions from earlier things. We're hearing so many things that are unresolved in that issue. So my question to you is, what are your concerns about the vaccine? Is it carte blanche? No, we trust it. There's experts, don't get me wrong. I know many experts have looked at this. I listened to one say that it wasn't the efficacy of the testing that we did that was shortened. The same amount of time was spent working on the vaccines. It was the after, like the testing, not the testing, the marketing, the finance, that end, the tail end was what was brought short. But the actual time to spend on the vaccine and its efficacy, as I've said, that's the only word I can think of at the moment, wasn't shortened. But I'm going to ask directly to yourselves, do you have concerns? Because you've come under a lot of criticism. Conventional doctors come under a lot of criticism because they speak openly, like, yes, take the vaccine. They advocate for the vaccine, which is understandable and everything. But let me ask the flip side. Do you have any reservations or concerns, despite saying the vaccine is what should be done at this moment in time?
Should I take it?
Yes, please, Dr. Wajid.
You know, every human being will have concerns. It's normal. You know, this is
you as a doctor,
as a human being, first, as a parent, as a doctor. Yes, of course. This is not Quran that we have to accept blindly, and you know, so we, of course, that we will have concerns, and this is why I would explain that if someone asked me 2 months ago, 1 month ago, are you going to get the COVID vaccine? I wouldn't have said yes. I would have said that I don't have the data. I don't know. I have to ask as well the people who go through this process. So I'm not able to just say, no, you know what, I blanket trust whatever. You know, Pfizer, just bung one in my arm and I'm fine, go for it. You know, I trust you guys. You guys did me right with all the other drugs. So we have concerns, of course. But what did we do? and this is what I would urge everyone else to follow, this kind of level, or something along that line. When the data did come, when the vaccine was finally promoted, we sat down with Muslim doctors, infectious disease specialists, virologists, bioethicists, people who work in intensive care, people who work in the acute setting, general practice, people who are involved in the medical health regulatory authority, people from other countries, and people outside of our own organizations, outside of our spheres. And we said that we discussed with these people, shuyukh and ulama as well, but we discussed, and we said, let's look at what we've got, let's look at the pros and cons, because we have to make a decision for ourselves and for our community. And when we sat down, we felt that there was a healthy debate. What about X? Why was it so fast? What about Y? What about more data? What about what about the other vaccine? What about this? What about that? So when all of this, we took it together, and when we put it all together, at the end of the day, we have to make some suggestion, because you're taught in the Quran that fasalu ahl dhikr. So ask the people who know. So what are the people who know? What are they going to say? I don't know, 50-50, up to you. That what we're saying is that, look, at the end of the day, it is your decision, and we're not saying that anyone's being forced into it or anything like that. But the information that we have, from the variety of specialities, from different people, different healthcare specialists across the country, Muslims and non-Muslims in this country and outside this country, old and young, at the end of the day, the absolute majority decision is that you have two things. You have this disease that is killing at the rate that it is killing. This disease that is causing the side effects and the long-term health conditions at the rate that it is causing. This is a known fact. You want to see it? Go. You know who to ask? Don't ask the doctors. Go ask the people burying. We are the National Burial Council. Ask them, because you can't make that statistic up, the ones they're putting into the ground. Ask them. That's on one side, and then on the other side we have the concerns, the legitimate concerns, the side effects, we wish there was more data, we wish there was diverse data, we wish there was this and this, but there's no comparison. This is real death, real data, real risk, and this is theoretical, and we wish it was better, and there are concerns and legitimate concerns and real issues, but still, it's not a contest. Unanimous decision to take it.
Dr. Wajid, what I feel is there is a reluctance for the media and for politicians to speak very frankly to people, and even doctors, because really, here's the frank truth. The frank truth is, that some people will take the vaccine and some people may die of taking the vaccine. Some people may be permanently disabled. Some people may be temporarily disabled. It is going to happen because we can't predict every single possible outcome. We just can't do it. That is going to happen. I'm sorry, but there is nothing, even like someone did say, quite true, it's ibuprofen, paracetamol, nothing is 100% safe, right? That's the reality, but we have to weigh it up. Like that's what it is. It is a game of statistics. It sounds nasty. It sounds brutal, right? But in the end, we are trying to save more lives than the lives that are going to be lost. That's what it comes down to.
You don't need to
say that because it's like, oh, you're going to kill us, But this is the problem. Unfortunately, politicians, they want to play, and this is all the trust factor. No one trusts politicians anymore. They all want to play their game. They want to come across as looking perfect, right? So I think it's part of the thing is that people just won't be honest, and the people are fed up of it, right? And this is the problem. Now you can't tell people the truth anymore because they're just not going to accept it. But I mean, the bottom line is, the fact is, isn't it, is that yes, the vaccine may harm people, but the bottom line is, inshallah, more people, their lives are going to be saved, right? In the grand scheme of things, it's going to save lives, right? More people are going to be saved than are going to die, and that's the price that that's what we're going to have to do. right?
And
We can't
Abdurraheem,
guarantee
inshallah,
everything
look,
100%.
Abdurraheem, on that point, this is the thing
Is that
now.
right, bro? Dr. Wajid? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Dr. Wajid, you mentioned about that I asked the people of knowledge if you don't know, and this is the thing now, and we're speaking specifically to the Muslims now. We used to take advice in the 90s from the scholars about particular mental health ailments, and they said if it's a Muslim doctor and you seek the advice from the Muslim doctor, that's the precedent that is there, that's the preference, that's the priority. Now that we've got more Muslim doctors on the Sunnah than I can remember in the 30 years being on the deen from the UK, we are seeing non-qualified, not even doctors, now casting doubt upon Muslim doctors on the Sunnah who are bringing what they have, let's say even if it's deficient, what they have. In the absence of that, we have the untrustworthy politicians and governments, as we're hearing in that particular instance. We've got non-Muslim doctors. They may be trustworthy, but we as Muslims have an ethical, religious underpinning where we want to go to those who co-religionists who are qualified in that particular field. We've had scholars. We've got ulama. Some brothers sent me some fatwa of Sheikh Ibn Baz, Sheikh Uthaymeen on this with regards to immunization when they were alive. And we've got individuals who are not at their level of scholasticism. I've seen the comments denigrating these particular scholars, denigrating. So it's all out, everyone's just thrown to the side, and it's left to those who are bringing opinion, conjecture, and in some instances, they're bringing some legitimacy from some of the reports, like ones that I've just highlighted there in that particular instance. So we've got in this place, and there are hadith that we've mentioned that we could bring as well. We have in the place, we've got unqualified individuals, entities speaking. Some of them not without basis, but we need to really go back to the fundamentals of what we are, who we are, and where we source our knowledge from. And as Surah Hujurat says about verifying the truth. Surah Hujurat, we all quote it, we all know it, about verifying the truth. But I'm not saying this to diminish. I'm going to keep repeating myself because we're looking at two polarizations. And like Abdurraheem Green, I'm not one way or the other. But what I am for is that we have a deen that we have to adhere to in how we are disseminating and how we are extrapolating and who we are sourcing information and knowledge from. And that seems to have gone out of the window by and large, by a few who are very vocal. And I don't have anyone in mind in that instance. I'm just talking about things that I've read. I know a doctor here, okay, who I meet on Fridays, mashallah tabarakallah. He was going to come on and maybe in a future show, Abdurraheem, where he speaks about what he's witnessing on the front line. He is on the front line, a European doctor, Muslim, alhamdulillah, with regards to COVID and everything like that. So speaking, and I know another doctor, some other doctors in Saudi Arabia who are dealing with this as well. And they're practicing, conscientious individuals, and they're speaking from their knowledge, from what is in front of them, from their own research, similar to what you're saying there. And there is convergence with what you are saying amongst these Muslim doctors that we are engaging with and interacting with in that instance. So I'm going to throw it back to you. I just want to put this out there for the brothers and sisters, because there's so many comments that are coming, not in this show, generally. And the basis of knowledge is questionable.
Let's cut to the chase. This is going to be really controversial, but and I apologize if people find it so, but let's cut to the chase. Nauzubillah, someone's relative has a burst appendix, turns up to the operating theater. Who's going, without that knowledge, because you're worried that this surgeon might be in the pay of this or that, would you pick up the scalpel and operate on your own child?
Never.
None of them would. This is what is worrying and upsetting us. You know, this is what's worrying and upsetting us, is that because if you did that, if anyone tried to do that, saying, no, I've read on Google, I've watched YouTube videos, I'm going to do my own surgery, I don't trust you guys. And you know what? This doctor, he drinks alcohol. He's a non-Muslim. I'm not going to trust him. I'm going to do my own surgery, bring the scalpel, put on some YouTube videos. But you wouldn't do that, all right? Because it's your child. You love your child. You love your family. So you wouldn't do that nonsense. No right-thinking person would. But people do this exact same thing on social media. Why? Somebody else is going to suffer, right? No, they don't think it's their child is going to suffer. Somebody else is going to suffer if you spread rumors that say that COVID is fake. If you say something without thinking, somebody else will suffer. But more people are going to be hurt by spreading false medical information than if you did surgery on your child. Because if that happened, your child would suffer. It would be one person. But some of these videos, some of these some of these videos, some of these theories that are going around, they are not in the realm of legitimate ikhtilaf. They're not in the realm of a legitimate basis. They are purely peddling misinformation. And really, when they this is where we get really worried about it. We get upset about it because people are suffering because of this misinformation. There are comments over here saying, I have a family of 100, none of them died of COVID. What does that mean? Does that mean COVID doesn't exist? Come on, guys. Where does this come from? And this is very dangerous. This is affecting the health of the Muslim community. I'll give you a story. There was an illegal wedding that happened. There were 200 people had an illegal Muslim wedding that happened in the first lockdown. They tracked down 70 people got COVID from that wedding because someone who got COVID was at that wedding. And 7 people died from those 70 people. None of those 7 people were at that wedding. Those people didn't even know about that wedding, but because those people who were at the wedding, they're healthy. I just have the sniffles. I didn't have any symptoms. Great, well done, mashallah to you. Those 7 people who died, they didn't deserve to die because you couldn't keep out of that wedding, or you guys couldn't organize yourselves. So this is what gets us worried and frustrated. That brothers, sisters, ask us questions. Nightingale Hospital, I can explain to you why that happened. Are there mistakes? 100%. Could things have been done better? Yes. Should pharma be trusted unconditionally? No way. Should you just listen to your doctor without even asking them any questions? No, I don't do that. So we're on your side. We're from the community, but let's also put this into proportion, into place. This is a real emergency. You don't need to, you like I said, go to the graveyards, go and visit the orphans if you want to see it. And if you don't take the vaccine, fine. If you've taken the information and you decide, I still am not convinced, Allah al-Azim, who's putting a gun to your head and getting you to take the vaccine? No one is. That's fine. Please don't spread the false information, because what's happening, as we saw from a video, for example, that was spreading recently, is that hundreds of people who are at risk of the vaccine are not taking it.
You know what happens when you have
or not taking masks, because they're saying, masks can kill.
Yeah. Dr. Wajid, listen, bro, you made a very emotional plea that I don't want to undermine it at all, actually. I don't want to undermine it. Because, I fundamentally agree with most of what you were saying. But I think, you have to understand, bro, the people's concerns are, like you say, okay, they're not holding a gun to people's head. But what they are doing is saying, if you don't take the vaccine, you won't be allowed to go to sporting events. You won't be, the whole thing is you're going to have to get a passport. Yeah, you're not going to be able to do anything. And it all feeds into it's like Tony Blair, the flipping war criminal, coming along and saying, you're just going to accept it, everybody, you're going to have to get a vaccine. I mean, what is, and like you say, experts, since when he's an expert? Right, on vaccine, and he comes along and he says something like that. It's like you might as well just get petrol and pour it on the fire of the conspiracy theorists. Yeah, how is this guy? If you want to shut people up, right, who are spreading conspiracy, that guy is just he just fed the fire. Because believe me, I think if that guy is saying this, then there is a plot. There is something going on. Right?
I must say, Abdurraheem Green, that
seriously. And when you say no one's putting a gun to your head, bro, if I can't travel unless I have a vaccine passport, it's true, you're not putting a gun to my head, but people are going to make my life impossible, right? Literally, virtually impossible if I don't toe the line, right? And this is incredible that they're saying this when they haven't even proven that taking the vaccine is going to stop it being spreaded. You have to say, what is going on? So, bro, I'm with you. I'm with you. I get your emotional plea, but you have to say that the levels of complexity here that are going on, and the way people are like thinking this is a system of control. They want to control us, and governments have used it to abuse powers to control people more. It's been done even in this country, right? So it's all feeding it, bro. It's all feeding it. And there is
appreciate though is
you know,
Dr. Shakil. Dr. Shahil get in.
A lot of the things that we've been talking about here,
guys, pharmaceuticals should not be in the hands of private companies. There should be certain things like water, right, that should not be in private hands. It should
but
be.
But that's not for them, Abdurraheem. Like I think we agree. But that's not for this is what's happening is the doctors are being attacked.
When you doctors can say, and we're part of the movement of doctors, for making all pharmaceuticals public utilities, owned by the people, right? Then it's going to be a lot harder for people to accuse you of being on the payroll of anything except whatever.
You could say that about the ulama, couldn't you? You know,
yes, you could. I was going to make that point, bro.
Saying, you know,
you wouldn't
speak out against this.
Scholars, I mean, to be honest, if some scholar is on the payroll of a government, why should I trust him? He's just gonna say what the government want him to say, and most of the time they do. We've seen it. Right.
The danger is that the youth only harm themselves by not going to the scholars.
But you find the scholars, bro. You find the trustworthy scholars who are not doing that, and that's in our history, bro.
I think we have
hadith of beware of the wars of the rulers, bro. Beware of it. So many of our ulama in our tradition do not go to the doors of the rulers, and they used to call scholars who went to the rulers fasiqs. This is what they used to. The ulama used to call them that, bro. Yeah. So study the tradition, bro. Right?
It's a difficult time we live in.
We need from our doctors. We need from our doctors the same independence, the same standing up, the same showing that we're not going to bow to corporate interests. That shouldn't be part of medicine. Medicine should be free, right? It shouldn't be run by corporations. Then people might start trusting things again, guys. You know?
I think you'd be surprised at how many doctors actually despise the medical profession, despise the...
Then do something. Form organizations, start campaigning again.
Abdurraheem, let him speak. Abdurraheem, let him speak.
Sorry, bro. Sorry. Yeah, I apologize, bro. I apologize.
I think you'd be surprised that...
Believe me, guys, I'm trying to support you totally. Believe me. I know you're well-intentioned. You want to do well. So sorry.
I mean, I have a senior colleague who would even reject a sandwich from Pfizer. You know, so as you know, when new drugs come out, drug companies go to hospitals and can we have 15 minutes of your time? This is the new equivalent of warfarin, and here's some lunch. I know a non-Muslim colleague, he wouldn't touch the sandwich. We have many people like that out there, and you'd be surprised that actually, doctors are sometimes the worst patients. And what do I mean by that? Doctors have many more questions. When a doctor says to another doctor, "Oh, it looks like you're improving. Your condition is improving," that doctor will say, "Okay, what about my inflammatory markers? What about my renal function? What about my liver function tests? What's the prognosis?" They'll have a lot more questions. So I think we have to trust the medical professions that actually we probably have had a lot more questions to ask about the research than people perhaps give us credit for.
Yeah.
No, Jazakallah.
Not all work with the government. So we work with the Islamic Medical Association of North America, Canada, Malaysia. So a lot of them, they're independent, they're private. We have part of our panel, they're private. They don't work for the government at all. In fact, some of them work for the competitors to these vaccines. So it's in their interest to say that don't trust these. And there are retired doctors as well, surgeons, many others who have nothing to gain. So we understand where you're coming from, that there is a healthy mistrust and there's unhealthy mistrust. If we have healthy mistrust, that's good, because it means that you're on your toes. And if you have an unhealthy mistrust, that's bad, because that means you'll be on your back.
I think sometimes what I tell my friends who are not doctors, if they say, I'm not ready for this vaccine, I say that's absolutely fine, no problem at all. But the person who then forwards a text message to 100 people, who forwarded it to another 1,000, who forwarded it to another 10,000, and actually an 85-year-old grandma doesn't take the vaccine as a consequence, and passes away in a month's time, these are consequences to your to your text messages and consequences to your words. No, if a brother doesn't or a sister doesn't want to take the vaccine, I actually don't have any reservations about that. It's actually the person who is actively misguiding people without any knowledge. And actually, the funny thing is, they tend to be younger people who are in their 20s or 30s, who are not actually likely to be personally impacted by the vaccine, by the virus as much.
Sorry to interrupt.
A lot of misinformation out there, and mashallah, it's good to see some doctors picking apart some of these viral videos of people protesting. Someone was putting a question, oh, how about that young man's video? You've probably seen him. I think he looks Bengali, or I don't want to stereotype, but same thing, but mashallah, I read an article where a doctor, I think, was it you, bro, that picked this? I think it was you.
What's that?
Someone wrote a really good refutation, taking his thing point by point to show how he had totally misrepresented the data. Alhamdulillah, this is what is needed. It's very, very good. And I agree with you, bro. Sharjeel, bro, we should not be forwarding stuff. This is not right from an Islamic point of view, right?
Irresponsible. It's irresponsible, and it contradicts. It contradicts the ayat in Surah Hujurat. It contradicts the ayat in Surah Hujurat, and we've got to be very careful because we're throwing away religious ethics from an emotional, unfounded basis, and it's unacceptable.
And just someone sounds like he sounds good,
What's happening? I'll tell you what's happened since that video went out. We've been accused of being funded by Bill Gates. This is the British Islamic Medical Association. We've been accused of being sellouts, hypocrites. Our members have been intimidated. They've been threatened. The amount of abuse that we're getting is actually quite shocking, and a few people on the team, have had to take they just I can't deal with this anymore. That's going around, and some of them are very personal attacks, and a lot of them, unfortunately, it's. Look, so it would be easy for the British Islamic Medical Association to come out and say, let's pick apart this person bit by bit. But we didn't want to kind of get into a kind of tit for tat debate. And therefore we kind of held back from the fray. But we had, Sri Lanka, South Africa, Canada, all of them doctors contacting us saying, we're getting abused because of you guys. Why don't you guys sort this out? We're like, this is the way it works. We all have the debate, and some of that debate is unfortunately false. Some of it, not all of it. And I really want to emphasize to have worries and concerns, join the club and let's have a discussion, inshallah. But some of it,
Dr. Wajid, look, the problem is, sometimes people are talking from two different spectrums and they don't see the other point of view. Right? So sometimes as a doctor, you won't see where these people are coming from. It's so important. It's easy to dismiss it, look at them as quacks, conspiracy theorists, but you have to understand there's a deep, deep underlying concern. The suspicion is against the whole system seems to be stacked against us. So these young Muslims, right, who are feeling victimized, they feel this is just all part of a system of hate that's out to eliminate us. Right. And it's like, you've joined the system, bro. You understand? That's how they look at it. Yeah. So if we fail to understand these things when in our communications and fail to deal with them, right, we are going to set ourselves up for, getting kicked around. Right. And I've read a few of the communications from, doctors and scholars, and it's like, guys, come on, like, you've got to get your finger on the pulse. And no pun intended, but as a doctor, you got to get your finger. You got to understand the illness that people have psychological issues as well. You got to understand that, right? I know you're doing it, and it's really unacceptable. And Abdul Haqq started this by saying, this should not be tolerated. And I want to re-emphasize, innamal mu'minuna ikhwa. We are brothers, right? No one should be threatening our brothers. People have given their lives to helping other human beings. You may not agree with some things, or you may have your suspicions, but believe me, I'm sure these two brothers here who are with us here today have given their lives and have been ready to sacrifice their life to help save other people's lives. Don't, no one should dismiss that lightly. They are doing their best with the tools that they have, right? We all have to work together. We have to love each other. We have to respect each other. We have to find a way, right? We have to find a solution. It's a difficult one, guys, because look, I'm a person myself. I want to tell you that I want to trust our governments. I want to believe that governments generally want the best for their people. I do want to believe that, right? And they may make mistakes here and there, but by and large, governments are out there for the best interests of their people. That's what they're there for. That's what they do. That's their job. They may mess up sometimes. Yes, they may get diverted by their selfish interests. But is that really, they're all out to eliminate us? And what's the interest? What's the benefit in them for that? Right? Think about it seriously a little bit,
But to add to that, Abdurraheem, that's a very important point, and I agree 100% with you. So while we have that mistrust, and Abdurraheem and I spoke about this a few weeks ago, while we have that mistrust for government, and it's a healthy mistrust, and it's one that's validated, and there's a number, and I'd say coming from the African Caribbean community, and being told about us being in preponderance with the ailments and everything like that, and when we were hearing that they were going to use the test the vaccine in Africa, we black people were up in arms. Okay, and we were like, be careful. We saw the legitimate, valid statistics of the health issues in America, the health issues with us in the UK and everything like that. But too many times we have been the guinea pigs, unsuspecting of vaccinations that we found out later on have damaged us, not only personally, but generationally. Okay, we've seen that it's unearthed a whole lot of other inequalities societally for particular minorities. So all of these are valid and all of these are legitimate. But what am I coming to? Abdurraheem was right in what he's saying, and I think that we agree with the mistrust of government. But what we can start concluding on in this particular show is, as Muslims, that mistrust should not cascade down in the polarizing, vitriolic way that is taking place amongst us as Muslims. Abdurraheem has brought the verse, verily the Muslims are one brotherhood. We've talked about the verses about verifying the truth when it comes to you from untrustworthy sources. And we're speaking to doctors who are on the sunnah. I want to make this clear. Practicing Muslim doctors, male and female, on the sunnah. So if they are the last bastion that we can't trust, then what do we do? Yeah. And I'll put this out there to those who are peddling, not those legitimately those ones who are concerned, those who are peddling without qualification, except Google and all of the data that they're extrapolating. What do you say is the alternative then? Give the people a legitimate, valid alternative to what you're saying, if we're going to discard the advice and the recommendations from the Muslim doctors who have researched this more than you or me have the capabilities of actually doing. Now, that's not me saying jump in, roll your sleeve up, take the vaccine. I'm not saying that. But I'm not saying, on the other hand, don't take the vaccine. What I'm saying is, what do we do in the absence of doctors who are Muslim and who are trying to give us advice and guidance in this? Because in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And we're not entirely blind in this instance, because we've got many Muslim practicing doctors who are looking at this globally, who are connecting globally.
Jazakallah. Even on that point, if you have a heart attack, brothers and sisters, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect everyone from any illness, COVID or non-COVID, but you trust the doctors. You're there. They're bunging medication into you from the same Pfizer company, by the way. They're putting they're literally putting a wire into your heart. You're trusting them. If you have surgery, you put them. All they need to do is twist the dial a little bit, and then you're gone. You wouldn't even know. They would, you trust them when you have surgery. You trust them when you're having a baby. You trust them when you have a heart attack. You're trusting your healthcare professionals, Muslim and non-Muslim, but you trust them all this time. Suddenly, they didn't become evil overnight. That they would go against your interests. That's all we're saying. That if they're making a recommendation, that they're saying, "Hey guys, You know, you trusted us yesterday when you had a heart attack and the day before when you had surgery. Then we're the same people, and we're saying that on balance, the risks, because a lot of the risks versus benefit that we've put together, and there are risks and there are benefits, that we would recommend this, and it's and it's to you, and that's all we're saying. And Wallahi al-Azim, if that was the end of the matter, then we wouldn't even have this podcast right now. It wouldn't be.
And it's from the door of necessity as well, Dr. Wajid, Dr. Sharjeel. There's a door of necessity, as we know, and for some, many maybe it may be from necessity that they take, if they feel they need to take the vaccines from necessity. So again, will they be condemned if they see from their own judgment, I need to take this, it's necessity, I'm going to take the risks, whatever risks that are there, but it's from that door of necessity, which we know is there. And what I want to do is, gentlemen, we need to conclude on this point. I think it's been an open and frank discussion. Yeah. And I want to say really, Jazakumullah khair to you, doctors. Really, I know you're getting a hard time in this instance, and maybe we've given you a bit of a hard time, but it's from the Bible of sincerity. Jazakumullah khair. Maybe we will do this again if there's points that you want to bring and everything. Stay safe, and may Allah bless you for the work that you're doing in this field, really, and in all levels, and your father, your brothers, the sisters who are doing this. Some wrote in and said that they'd lost their mother to COVID, and condolences to you and everyone. And we ask Allah to protect all of us who are on this show, those who are watching, and their loved ones from contracting this strain, the next strain, strain, and to keep us safe always. So, Abdurraheem, I'll leave it to you to close off, and we can end this very informative and insightful podcast today, inshallah.
Well, I you know what, I have one final thought that I want to put across. I haven't listened to it yet, but I know Dr. Abdul Wahid from Hizb ut-Tahrir. No one can accuse Hizb ut-Tahrir of being government stooges, right? If anyone's read any of their stuff, it is anti-government almost everywhere, right? So, like, no one could accuse Dr. Abdul Wahid of having the wool pulled over his eyes when it comes to corporations and governments and so on and so forth, right? And yeah, I know that he's taken the vaccine, right? I haven't listened to his podcast yet. Yeah, so if he is, to be honest, if he's done it, that's good enough for me. So that, I mean, you know, so what I'm saying is, mashallah, he's a practicing brother, mashallah, alhamdulillah. So, you know, I want to especially thank Dr. Sharjeel for, you know, a very, you know, telling us about what it's like on the front line. Dr. Wajid, for all your efforts. Please tell the doctors, you know, not to give up their efforts, inshallah. You think about your communications, inshallah, but you know, may Allah bless you for all the work you're doing. I know that, you know, you're doing your best. Subhanallah, and remember, brothers and sisters, whoever saves the life of a human being, it's as if they saved everybody's life. And whoever, you know, kills a human being, it's as if they killed, you know, everybody. So, you know, we have here two brothers and many other Muslim doctors who are trying to save people's lives. It's a noble, lofty task. It's not easy. It's very hard. Please, you know, let's not tolerate this sort of bad behavior and bad manners, let alone that the fact that people doing this feel intimidated. This is not how we should be as Muslims, right? Let's have these debates, let's have these conversations, but keep it within the right manners and the right paradigms. Yeah. So Jazakallah khair, brothers, for joining us. Abdul Haqq, you've been brilliant as well.
And you, Jazakallah khair.
Abdurraheem Green, and that is
Abdul Haqq Baker.
No, I think that's Dr. Abdul Haqq Baker.
That's Abdurraheem Green. That's Dr. Wajid. That's Dr. Sharjeel. And this has been a piece of cake. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.